When the rescue team sedated the stray German Shepherd, they thought they were saving a life. It wasn't until 2 a.m., after the heavy anesthesia wore off, that they discovered the truth. She wasn't just a lost dog. Hidden beneath her matted fur were 3 tiny, whimpering puppies fighting for survival. As the team rushed to revive her, the weight of betrayal fell heavy on my heart. I had left her vulnerable, not knowing she had been carrying my family's secret all along. My name is Avery. The ties that bind us can also shatter us. As I knelt beside the dog, my heart raced not just from the urgency of the moment, but also from the realization that everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and love was about to be tested. The vet on call, Dr. Stevens, worked efficiently, her hands steady as she administered oxygen to the mother dog. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, each twist and turn reminiscent of the complicated relationship I shared with my own mother, Claire. Just as the dog had been abandoned, I felt a sense of abandonment in my own life. Claire's absence was a shadow that loomed over my every decision. I glanced at Jordan, who stood by my side, his supportive presence a balm for my racing thoughts. He understood the weight of my past, the scars that never seemed to fade, and yet he never pushed me to confront them. Instead, he offered a gentle squeeze of my hand, a silent vow that I wouldn't have to face this alone. Watching the vet work, I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the dog's plight mirrored my own struggles. The need for rescue, the longing for connection, and the overwhelming fear of vulnerability. "Let's call her Hope," I suggested, the name slipping out before I could reconsider it. It felt fitting, a beacon in the dark, a reminder that even in despair, there was a chance for renewal. Jordan nodded, a smile breaking through the tension on his face. "Hope it is," he affirmed. And I could see the flicker of warmth in his eyes as he began to open up to the idea of taking care of the puppies as well. For the next few days, we threw ourselves into caring for Hope and her puppies. I was up at dawn, feeding them tiny amounts of formula, my heart swelling with love for these fragile lives. Each whimper from the puppies ignited a protective instinct in me, drawing parallels to my own childhood, a time when I longed for that same kind of unconditional love from Claire. I found myself reflecting on the harsh reality that my mother had chosen her battles with her demons over the connection we might have shared. The rescue shelter became my sanctuary, a place where I could immerse myself in the work of saving lives, but the shadows of my family history crept in at odd moments. Each time I wiped the drool from the puppies' tiny faces, I thought of Claire's absence, the moments we never had, and the bitter words exchanged during our last encounter. It was as if I were trying to mend not just the wounds of these animals, but also my own, struggling to find a way to heal what had been broken long before I could understand it. As I lay on the floor of the shelter, surrounded by the warmth of the puppies, I felt an unexpected pang of loneliness wash over me. The tiny creatures nuzzled against me, their soft fur reminding me that I wasn't alone in this world, yet the ache for a mother's love persisted. I could almost hear Claire's voice in my head, laced with disappointment, questioning my choices and my commitment to helping others instead of pursuing a more traditional life. I had to remind myself that those judgments were her reflections, not mine. Jordan often caught me lost in thought and would pull me back gently, reminding me to be present. "Avery, you're doing an incredible job," he would say, kneeling beside me as we watched Hope cradle her puppies in a protective embrace. "Look at how far she's come. She's not just a rescue dog, she's a symbol of survival." His words grounded me, filling the room with an energy that made it easier to breathe. But when the shelter closed for the evening, the stillness wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, drawing me back to memories I wished to escape. I wondered if Claire could ever see me now, not as her disappointment, but as a woman who had chosen to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Perhaps she would understand that my heart, while fractured, still believed in love. I began to consider reaching out to her, a thought that both exhilarated and terrified me. What would I even say? Would she respond? I stared at the puppies, their tiny tails wagging as they tumbled over one another in a playful dance, and I realized that they were teaching me something about forgiveness. Just as Hope had fought for her puppies against all odds, I had to confront my own fears. It was time to face the complexities of my relationship with Claire. To understand that healing isn't always a straight path, but one filled with hurdles and setbacks. With a deep breath, I made my decision. I would write her a letter, one that poured out my heart, my fears, and my desire for reconciliation. I wanted her to know that although our past was a tangled mess, I was willing to untangle it one thread at a time. Perhaps, like Hope, we could find our way back to each other. That night, I sat down with a notepad and pen, the soft sounds of the puppies snoozing around me creating a comforting backdrop. The first word flowed easily, and as I wrote, I felt the weight of my emotions pouring onto the page. Each sentence brought clarity, a step closer to healing, not just for myself, but for the bond I longed to rebuild. I didn't know what the outcome would be, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope within myself. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start. I knew the process of mending a fractured relationship was rarely straightforward, but as I sat at my kitchen table, a warm cup of tea in hand, I felt an urgent push to reach out to my mother. The stray dog, whom I had affectionately named Shadow, had become a mirror reflecting my own vulnerabilities and the wounds I had long since buried. I looked at him sprawled out on the living room floor, his gentle breathing a soothing rhythm against the clamor in my mind. The scars he bore mirrored my own, his timid nature a haunting echo of the fragility I felt each time I thought of Claire. My mother had always been the one to lift me up, yet her departure into addiction had left me feeling abandoned, and I had built walls around my heart in self-defense. Jordan entered the room, his presence instantly calming. He could always sense when I was spiraling, and today was no exception. "Hey, you've been deep in thought," he remarked, taking a seat across from me. "What's on your mind?" I hesitated. The words caught in my throat, but the look on his face reminded me I was safe to share. I spoke about my plans to reach out to Claire, the turmoil it stirred in my chest, and how the shadow of her past loomed over me like a thick fog. "You know it's okay to feel scared, right?" Jordan said softly, his eyes never wavering. "You've been through so much, and confronting her won't change the past, but it could open a door to understanding." His unwavering support was a balm to my anxious thoughts. I took a deep breath, considering his words. My mind began to sift through memories. The late-night phone calls filled with apologies that never came, the silence that followed, and the void that had settled in its place. I resolved to take the leap, knowing that if I wanted closure or healing, I had to be brave enough to face the woman who had once been my entire world. Days turned into a week as I hesitated, fingers hovering over my phone whenever I thought of Claire. The fear of rejection gnawed at me, but Shadow seemed to sense my indecision, nudging me with his nose as if urging me to make a move. Each time I felt overwhelmed, I'd find solace in his presence, stroking his soft fur as he curled up beside me. I realized that Shadow was not just a rescue, he was my companion on this journey toward forgiveness. I needed to take my own steps toward healing, just as I was helping him recover. Finally, with Jordan by my side for moral support, I dialed Claire's number. My heart raced as the phone rang, and when her voice finally broke through the static, it felt like a lifetime had passed. "Avery?" she asked, and I detected a hint of disbelief. "Is it really you?" I swallowed hard, the knot in my throat threatening to choke me, but I pressed on. "It's me, Mom. I wanted to talk." The silence that followed felt both heavy and electric, charged with all the unsaid words and unresolved feelings that had accumulated over the years. I didn't expect to hear from you," she stammered, and I could sense the uncertainty in her voice. "I've missed you, Claire," I finally managed to say, feeling the tears well up in my eyes. I fought to keep my voice steady as we navigated the tumultuous waters of our relationship. We exchanged apologies, accusations, and moments of vulnerability that had long been silenced. I learned about the demons she still fought, her struggles with addiction, and the guilt that plagued her for not being the mother I deserved. Each revelation stripped away another layer of resentment I had clung to, revealing the raw, aching pain beneath. As we talked, I felt a flicker of understanding blossom within me. Claire was still the woman I had loved, although altered by her struggles. I realized that while I had made her mistakes my own, she was fighting her own battles. It wasn't easy to forgive, but as I listened to her voice, I could see my own reflection in her pain, a yearning for connection, for understanding, for healing. "I want to try again," I said finally, the words slipping out like a prayer. "I want to work on our relationship." To my surprise, Claire's voice trembled with emotion. "I'd like that, Avery. I've missed you so much, and I don't expect it to be easy, but I want to try." We ended the call with tentative hope, both knowing that this was only the beginning of a long journey. I hung up, a mixture of relief and fear coursing through me. I turned to see Jordan standing in the doorway, a proud smile on his face. He walked over and enveloped me in a hug, and I let the warmth of his embrace wash over me. That night, as I lay on the couch with Shadow curled up beside me, I felt a sense of peace. The road ahead was uncertain, riddled with challenges, but I was no longer alone. I had taken the first step, and in doing so, I realized that healing could be a shared experience, not just for me, but for Claire as well. It would take time, patience, and forgiveness. But I was willing to embrace the journey, one paw print at a time. In that quiet moment, I understood that just as I was rescuing Shadow, I was also beginning to rescue my relationship with my mother. Both paths were intertwined, leading me toward a deeper understanding of love, acceptance, and the possibility of new beginnings. I closed my eyes, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within me, a promise that healing was not only possible, but within reach. If you've enjoyed this story of resilience and family, I invite you to subscribe for more heartfelt tales that explore the bonds we share and the journeys we undertake to heal and grow. Your support helps keep the storytelling alive. As I sat in the dimly lit room, the faint sounds of the shelter around me faded into the background. I focused on the German Shepherd curled up in the corner, her breathing steady but shallow. Naming her Luna seemed fitting, as if the night sky had found a way to share its beauty with her. I felt an undeniable connection between us, a shared understanding of pain and resilience. As I gently brushed my fingers along her fur, I thought about my own scars, the ones that ran deeper than the surface. Jordan came into the room, a warm smile spreading across his face as he approached. "How's my favorite patient doing?" he asked, kneeling beside me. His presence always had a way of soothing my worries, and I appreciated the way he understood my bond with these animals. "I think Luna's ready for some more attention," I replied, gesturing to the dog. The way Jordan leaned in, his fingers delicately petting her, reminded me of the love and care we shared, not just for each other, but for every creature that needed a second chance. "I was thinking we should set up a social media page for her," Jordan suggested, his enthusiasm contagious. "You know, get some awareness out there. Maybe find her a forever home." I loved how he could see the potential in every situation, always looking for ways to spread hope. But a flicker of anxiety crossed my mind. Could I really let her go? Even as I wanted the best for Luna, the thought of parting felt like losing a piece of myself. What if she's not ready to leave? I mused, looking into Luna's soulful eyes. What if she needs more time? Jordan nodded, understanding my fears. "We'll take it one step at a time. For now, let's focus on healing her, and then we can see what the future holds." His reassurance wrapped around me like a comforting blanket, reminding me of the importance of patience and compassion, not just for Luna, but for myself too. As the days passed, I found solace in the routine of caring for Luna. I created a nurturing environment, filling her space with toys, soft blankets, and the comforting scent of lavender to help ease her anxiety. Each small milestone she achieved felt monumental: a wagging tail, a curious sniff around the room, a gentle bark that seemed to echo her slowly blossoming spirit. With every moment I spent with her, I felt a flicker of my own heart healing, even if it was just a little. However, the shadows of my past loomed larger than I had anticipated. Claire's absence still pierced my heart like a thorn. I had spent years building walls around my emotions, convincing myself that I was better off without her influence. But now, as I confronted Luna's journey, I began to wonder if I had been too quick to judge. Was my mother merely a reflection of her struggles, just as Luna was a representation of her own trauma? It was a question that gnawed at me, challenging everything I thought I knew about forgiveness. One evening, while I was sitting with Luna on my lap, I received a text from Claire. My heart raced as I opened it, the familiar tightness in my chest returning. It was a simple message. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, my mind racing with uncertainty. Did I even want to engage with the woman who had once caused so much pain? Yet something deeper inside me longed for resolution, a part that yearned to understand the woman behind the mask of my childhood memories. After pacing the room, I finally decided to respond. "When?" I typed, my fingers trembling as I hit send. The reply came quickly, suggesting a coffee shop not far from the shelter. My stomach churned at the thought of seeing her, but I knew I had to confront this chapter of my life, just as I was helping Luna confront hers. The next day, I arrived early, my heart pounding as I waited at a small table near the window. I took a deep breath, looking around at the bustling shop filled with laughter and chatter, feeling like an outsider in my own life. When Claire walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked worn, her eyes carrying a weight that mirrored my own fears. As she approached, I struggled to find my voice. "Avery," she said softly, sitting down across from me. The sound of my name on her lips stirred something deep within me. Was it longing, anger, or perhaps a flicker of hope? "It's been too long." Her words hung in the air like unspoken apologies. "I've missed you." For a moment, I couldn't respond. The walls I had built around my heart felt both protective and imprisoning. But just as I had found a way to connect with Luna, I knew I needed to find a way to connect with Claire. "I've missed you too," I finally admitted, the truth pouring out before I could stop it. We spent the next hour navigating the rocky terrain of our shared past, revealing secrets that had long been buried. Claire spoke of her struggles, the demons that had haunted her for years, and I began to see her not just as my mother, but as a woman searching for redemption. It was in those moments of vulnerability that I realized our scars might bind us in ways I had never expected. Just as Luna needed care and understanding, perhaps Claire deserved a chance to heal too. As we parted ways, I felt lighter somehow, as if I had taken a small step toward forgiveness. I glanced down at my phone to check the time, and there it was, a new message from Jordan. "How did it go?" he asked, his concern palpable even through the screen. I smiled to myself, knowing I had taken a crucial step toward mending the pieces of my past. "It's a start," I replied, my heart brimming with hope, ready to embrace the journey ahead for both myself and Luna. As the afternoon light filtered through the window, casting warm hues across the room, I felt a stirring within me. Luna, the German shepherd I had rescued, lay curled up in her bed, her breathing steady and calm. Watching her, I couldn't help but think of the parallels between her journey and my own. Both of us had been battered by life in different ways, both searching for solace and healing. Jordan had always been my anchor, and today was no different. I could picture him just outside the door, waiting patiently for my return, ready to embrace me with open arms and an understanding heart. With renewed determination, I decided it was time to face my mother again. The conversation at the cafe had felt like only the tip of the iceberg, and there was so much more to unravel. I took a deep breath, my mind racing through a tangle of emotions, fear, anger, and a flicker of hope. Would Claire even be willing to meet me again? I had so many questions swirling in my head, and I could feel the weight of unresolved feelings pulling me back into a familiar spiral of anxiety. After a moment, I grabbed my phone and sent Claire a message, tentative but firm. "Can we talk again? I want to understand." As soon as I hit send, I felt a rush of adrenaline, a mixture of dread and anticipation. Would she respond positively, or would this just be another instance of our broken connection? While I waited, I turned my focus back to Luna, stroking her fur and whispering promises of a better life. She deserved that, just as I was starting to believe I did too. Minutes passed like hours, and just as I began to doubt my decision, my phone buzzed with a reply. "Where?" Claire asked, the simplicity of her message a stark contrast to the complex emotions that had led me to reach out. I took a moment to gather my thoughts and decided that the park, where I had shared countless memories with both her and Samuel, would be a fitting place to bridge the gap between us. I typed back, "The park at 3?" Jordan must have sensed my heightened emotions because he appeared in the doorway, concern etched across his features. "You okay?" he asked softly, stepping into the room. I nodded, though I wasn't entirely sure it was true. "I reached out to my mom," I confessed, watching as a mixture of support and apprehension crossed his face. "I asked to meet." His eyes widened slightly, and he moved closer, wrapping his arms around me in a comforting embrace. "That's brave," he said, and I could feel the warmth of his belief in me. It felt good to have someone by my side who understood the tangled mess of family dynamics and the pain of estrangement. "Just remember, no matter what happens, you have me. You're not alone in this." With his words resonating in my heart, I began to envision the possibilities of our meeting. What if Claire was ready to open up? What if we could finally start to mend what had been broken for so long? I found myself daydreaming about a different kind of reunion, one filled with shared stories, laughter, and perhaps even an apology or two. But that sweet image was quickly overshadowed by the fear of rejection and the weight of years of silence. The clock ticked closer to our meeting time, and I felt a surge of both anxiety and determination. I looked down at Luna, who had lifted her head and was watching me intently, as if sensing my internal struggle. "You know, girl, we've both had to face some tough stuff," I said softly, leaning down to scratch behind her ears. "But we're going to be okay." At that moment, Luna wagged her tail, a sign of her undeniable spirit despite everything she had been through. Her resilience reminded me that healing is a journey, not a destination. As the minutes dwindled away, I finally decided it was time to leave. Jordan walked with me toward the park, his presence grounding me and providing a sense of calm amidst the swirling storm of emotions. When we arrived, I spotted Claire sitting on a bench, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of the sun. My heart raced as I approached, each step heavy with the weight of our past. She looked up, and for the first time in what felt like ages, our eyes met. The distance between us seemed to shrink momentarily, but I couldn't predict where this conversation would lead. "Hi," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her expression was unreadable, a mix of vulnerability and guardedness. "Thanks for coming." "I wasn't sure I would," she admitted, her voice faltering slightly. A lump formed in my throat as I realized just how hard this was for both of us. But I felt like I had to try. We sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words and emotions. As I glanced around the park, the laughter of children playing nearby and the distant chirping of birds contrasted sharply with the heaviness in my heart. "There's so much I want to say," I started, but Claire held up a hand, stopping me. "Before you say anything, I need to apologize," she interjected, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I haven't been the mother you deserve. I've let my own struggles get in the way, and for that, I'm so sorry." The sincerity in her voice struck a chord within me, and I could feel my defenses beginning to crumble. "I've felt abandoned," I admitted, my voice trembling. "But I want to understand, to know what drove us apart." The conversation unfolded slowly, each word a step toward unraveling the complex tapestry of our lives. With Jordan by my side, I found the strength to navigate the depths of our shared pain. As we talked, I felt the walls I had built around my heart start to break down, allowing for the possibility of healing and forgiveness. Luna's story had mirrored mine more than I ever realized, and maybe, just maybe, we could both find a way back to wholeness. With each passing day, Luna began to show signs of recovery that filled me with hope. I watched as her once dulled eyes brightened, reflecting a spark of life that echoed my own journey towards healing. Jordan and I spent countless hours beside her, whispering encouragement and patiently coaxing her to trust us. In those quiet moments, I often found myself reflecting on my mother, Claire, and the struggles that had driven a wedge between us. Despite the pain of our estrangement, I recognized that I was carrying unresolved emotions that weighed heavily on my heart. One afternoon, as I sat on the floor of our living room with Luna resting her head on my lap, Jordan walked in with a gentle smile. "I thought you might need a break," he said, holding 2 steaming mugs of tea. The warmth of the cup was a comfort as I took a sip, but the weight of my thoughts lingered. Jordan, always attuned to my moods, settled beside me, his arm wrapping around my shoulders. "You know, I think it's time to talk to your mom," he suggested softly, his voice steady. The idea sent a jolt of anxiety through me, but I couldn't shake off the truth in his words. Luna had shown me that healing is not just about oneself, it's about confronting the past and seeking connection, even when it feels daunting. That evening, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying memories of my childhood with Claire. The laughter, the warmth, but also the arguments that had become more frequent as I grew older. It was a struggle I had buried deep, but now, with Luna's recovery serving as a catalyst, I felt compelled to confront my own wounds. I thought about the night she left, the way the air felt heavy with unspoken words, and how I had wished for her to stay, to fight for us. As those thoughts swirled, I realized that I needed to find a way to reach out to her, to attempt a bridge over the chasm that had formed between us. The next day, as I cared for Luna, I decided to draft a letter to Claire. I wanted to pour my heart out, to express the feelings that had been dormant for too long. I wrote about my fears, my longing for connection, and how I missed the simple things, the moments we used to share. The words flowed with an intensity I hadn't expected, each stroke of the pen feeling like a release. It was cathartic, almost like a confession to myself as much as to her. When I finished, I read it over, my heart racing at the thought of sending it, but I also felt lighter, as if the act of writing had lifted a weight off my shoulders. That evening, I sealed the letter, my heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. Would she understand? Would she be open to a conversation? When I handed it to Jordan, I felt vulnerable. "You're doing the right thing," he reassured me, his eyes filled with warmth. I watched him as he tucked it into an envelope, knowing that whatever the outcome, I had taken a significant step. While Luna continued her healing journey, I allowed my thoughts to wander freely to the past, the memories surfacing like ghosts that needed to be acknowledged. My father, Samuel, had always been a steady presence in my life. Yet there were shadows in his eyes that hinted at burdens he carried. I wondered if he had known more about Claire's struggles than he had ever shared. Perhaps he too was haunted by unspoken truths that tied us together in ways I had yet to comprehend. After a week of waiting, I received a reply from Claire. Her words were cautious, yet filled with a longing that mirrored my own. She spoke of her regrets, her struggles with addiction, and the pain of feeling like she had let me down. As I read her letter, tears streamed down my cheeks. The vulnerability she had shared echoed my own, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of understanding for the woman who had once felt so distant. I realized that her demons had not only affected her, but had trickled down into my life and choices as well. In that moment, I felt a surge of empathy, breaking the cycle of blame I had carried for years. With the exchange of letters, a fragile thread began to connect us. It was just a start, but it felt monumental. Encouraged, I decided to invite her for a visit. I wanted her to meet Luna, to witness the healing process that had begun in both of us. I hoped that seeing this beautiful dog, who had fought her way back from despair, would inspire Claire to reconnect with her own strength. When the day finally arrived, my heart raced with anticipation. As I prepared our home for her visit, I couldn't shake off the nerves. Jordan squeezed my hand, grounding me. "No matter what happens, you're taking a brave step," he reminded me, his words filling me with courage. The doorbell rang, and as I opened the door, I was met with Claire's hesitant smile. It was a moment suspended in time, filled with unspoken histories and the potential for healing. As she entered, I took a deep breath, ready to embrace the complexity of our relationship. The path before us was uncertain, but I felt a glimmer of hope that we could navigate it together, just as Luna had shown me the power of resilience and the strength found in vulnerability. With every new encounter, whether with family or a struggling animal, I began to understand that healing is an ongoing journey. I shared this realization with Jordan, hoping others might feel inspired to share their own stories of healing and connection. With every new encounter, whether with family or a struggling animal, I began to understand that healing is an ongoing journey. I shared this realization with Jordan, hoping others might feel inspired to share their own stories of healing and connection. We never know who might be waiting to hear our truths and find their own healing through our experiences. As I sat on the couch with the German Shepherd resting beside me, I felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through my chest, a mix of hope and trepidation. I watched as the dog's eyes slowly opened, revealing a depth of pain and fear that mirrored my own turbulent past. It was as if, in that moment, we were both navigating our separate yet intertwined journeys of recovery. The dog, whom I decided to name Kira, had been through something unimaginable, yet here she was, starting to trust again. I couldn't help but think of my own relationship with Claire, my mother. The walls I had built around my heart were beginning to feel a little less impenetrable, and perhaps this was the start of a transformation. Jordan entered the room, carrying a couple of treats in his hand. His gentle smile lit up the dim space. "How's our girl doing?" he asked, kneeling down beside Kira, who responded with a hesitant wag of her tail. It was a small victory, but it filled me with a sense of accomplishment. I thought about how Jordan had always been my anchor, never pushing me too hard, but encouraging me to confront my fears when I was ready. "I think she's starting to feel safe," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. The connection between us felt palpable, a reminder that healing sometimes required another being's presence, whether human or animal. As we settled in for the evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that Kira's healing would somehow drive me to confront my own demons, particularly the shadow of my mother that loomed over me. The urge to reach out to Claire was becoming stronger. I had spent so many years avoiding that conversation, wrapped in resentment and hurt, but now I began to wonder if perhaps she, too, was waiting for a sign of forgiveness. I felt a pang of guilt for the anger I harbored toward her, realizing it had festered for too long. Kira needed me to guide her toward trust, and maybe I could do the same for my mother. That night, as I lay in bed, the moonlight filtering through the curtains, thoughts swirled in my mind. I remembered the last time I saw Claire. The harsh words we exchanged haunted me like a specter. The echoes of our argument played back in my head, and I cringed at the memory of how hurtful I had been. I recalled how lonely and lost she seemed, burdened by her own struggles, and I realized that we were more alike than I had ever admitted. Just as Kira was a reflection of my own pain, Claire was a reminder of the love I craved but could never articulate. Perhaps it was time to break the cycle of silence and hurt. In the days that followed, I devoted my energy to Kira's recovery. I spent hours at the shelter, learning about her past and researching ways to help her overcome the scars that had been inflicted on her. The more I learned, the more I found myself drawing parallels between Kira's journey and my own. I shared these thoughts with Jordan, and he nodded in understanding. "You know, it's like you're giving her a chance to rewrite her story," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. I realized he was right. By helping Kira, I was also preparing myself to face the complexities of my own narrative. One afternoon, while on a walk with Kira, I decided to take a different route, one that led toward the park where I used to spend time with Claire. The sun beamed brightly, and the laughter of children filled the air, bringing back memories of simpler times before life had become so complicated. With every step, the weight of my past felt lighter. I stopped at a bench where I had sat with my mother countless times, and I closed my eyes, allowing the memories to wash over me. I took a deep breath, a mix of nostalgia and yearning surging within me. It was then that I made a decision. I reached for my phone and hesitated for a moment, my heart racing at the thought of dialing Claire's number. Yet I knew I had to take that leap. The words I had rehearsed in my mind felt inadequate, but I pressed the call button anyway. When her voice finally came through, I was taken aback by how fragile and strained it sounded. "Avery?" she asked, uncertainty lacing her tone. "I'm here, Mom," I replied, surprised by the tremor in my own voice. The conversation unfolded like a long-buried seed breaking through the surface. It was awkward at first, filled with pauses and halting confessions, but slowly the walls began to crumble. I shared my journey with Kira, and she listened intently, her silence filled with understanding. It struck me that Claire needed to hear my story as much as I needed to hear hers. We talked about her struggles, the shadows she faced, and the regrets she carried. I felt compassion rising within me, a deep understanding of the battles she had fought in her own life. As we spoke, I could sense the flicker of hope igniting between us. The emotional distance that had defined our relationship for so long began to close. It was not a full reconciliation, but it was a start. I realized that just as Kira was learning to trust again, so too was I learning to trust my mother. Our dialogue was a fragile bridge, spanning years of silence and pain, but it felt sturdy enough to take the first step forward. By the time I hung up, I was exhausted but exhilarated. I had faced one of my greatest fears, and in doing so, I felt the release of a burden I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Kira lay by my feet, and as I ran my fingers through her fur, I knew that we were both on paths of healing, learning that love, in all its forms, could conquer even the deepest scars. This journey was far from over, but with each step, I felt myself becoming more whole, more ready to embrace the messy beauty of relationships, both human and canine.